thank you so much for hopping on to join us today for Do More with MotoCommerce, our bi-weekly webinar where we cover various topics around the MotoCommerce tool and how you can get the most out of the tool as well. But today, actually, I'm excited to have a special guest with us, Todd Temple. Todd is actually a really good friend of mine and an ex-colleague as well, when we often talk about what's going on in our industry. So current trends, and we debate about the future as well. And we've been having obviously a lot of conversations around the challenges that are happening in our industry right now. A major one is ultimately the inventory shortage. So I thought it would be great to bring Todd to our panel today, just to talk about the insights from the actual vAuto tool, what he and any vAuto users are able to see in there, and how that may impact your business, and how can you take the information and try and turn it around and get through these challenging times as well. So Todd, thanks for hopping on. I think before we kind of launch in, maybe we'll do a quick introduction just in case any of our listeners have not had the opportunity to interact with you or meet you.
Sure, sounds great. Thanks, Claris. Appreciate the introduction. So for those of you that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting or being in your boardroom over the years, my name's Todd Temple. I am responsible and accountable to the vAuto business unit here in Canada. So I have this unique role where I kind of sit in the middle of a partnership between vAuto USA and Auto Trader Canada. And I kind of work in a collaborative manner between those two companies, as well as between our performance management channel. That's our channel of automotive experts that are working in a consultative manner with all of our subscribing dealer base. And along with the sales unit that rolls up underneath me here as well. So I've been with Auto Trader for 13 years. I spent the first 3 years with Auto Trader in the digital solutions space. And once the partnership was formed with vAuto, I've been in the vAuto channel since inception. So believe it or not, that's actually a decade at this point in time. That partnership's existed for 10 years. Prior to that, I spent 20 years in automotive, 2 years at the OEM level, and the remainder in the retail space.
Thanks, Todd. So, yeah, I can't believe 10 years. It's craziness. Yeah. So really for our conversation today, we just, there's a few things that we wanted to focus on. One is what we see in the current market, and how is that trending, and how that may impact how we look at pricing inventory as well. Then we wanted to talk about the regional trend, and again, what's that impact on your dealership, even if you're not in that specific region. And then also just a few takeaways from today's session is how can we recover from this inventory supply and demand challenge that we're all experiencing right now. So Todd was kind enough to pull some screenshots from the back end of the tool. We actually going to go through some of these screenshots to look at what does that tell us, and how can we take the information and use it to actually help us improve or increase the profitability for our store, which is ultimately the goal for any dealerships, and especially when utilizing the vAuto tool. So the first screenshot here is we've got per day sell rates within 500 miles of your store. So Todd, if you don't mind, just run us through what we see on the screen here and why is it important?
Yeah, for sure. So with the limited amount of time we have, I thought we'd just kind of talk a little bit high level about the market. The market's been really fascinating. It's been stressful, and it's also had its share of opportunities. So what we're looking at in this slide right here, this is taken out of the general market tab. For anybody that's on the call, it's already a vAuto subscriber. You'll be able to see a lot of this data. So one of the things that vAuto did right at the beginning of the pandemic was really add in some visibility that included some short-term views of what was going on in the market. Right, we wanted to understand in the short term what kind of impacts are news that's coming out on the TV, news that's being released on the internet. How is that information on the pandemic and its effects on consumers? How is that impacting sales, for example? So in this slide here, what we do is we in the past, vAuto provision has always focused on a rolling 45-day view. So now what we're doing is we're providing a view, which is the traditional 45-day view. And in addition, we take a look at a 14-day view, a much shorter window, just to understand, again, in the short term, are sales trending up or are sales trending down? So a couple numbers in there, it's just indicating that it is a 45-day view we're looking at. We can see there was 521 vehicles sold in this example slide that you've popped up here, Claris. And in the second slide, we can see the 14-day trend. There was 579 vehicles sold. So we can see that the broader market is actually trending upwards in terms of total sales that are taking place. So again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to do our very best. We know that everybody's looking for someone with the crystal ball. And there's a lot of things that we can do with vAuto and the vAuto data that may not be a crystal ball, but certainly helps you see halfway around the corner. And these are just a couple of the things that we've added based on dealer feedback since the pandemic has been a part of our life.
Yeah, and I guess that view was introduced because the market is so dynamic that you needed a shorter term view as well.
I don't even have a word to describe how dynamic it is, Claris. I was looking with one of our performance managers at a specific vehicle just last week, and it was a vehicle that in the month of May saw an appreciation in a specific dealer's market of 25%. The vehicle increased in value by 25% in 30 days. Wow. So there's just really been some unprecedented things that are happening. So you really want to stay close to the market right now.
So in these next couple of slides, we look at it from more of a regional view.
Yeah, exactly. So this really allows us to see the day supply, and we can look at that to your comment, Claris, regionally. So just as an example, we can see that it's toggled over Newfoundland, right, our far east coast. And we can see the day supply is now under 30 days, which is crazy. Just crazy, tight, compressed market. Day supply, for those that aren't familiar with the term, it's really simply a supply versus demand, right? Supply versus demand metric. We're looking at the rolling rate of sales, and we're looking at that versus the current level of inventory that's available in that specific market. So there we can see it's 29.5. I think in the next slide, we can see over in Manitoba, it's 45.3, which in its own right is still a very low day supply number. Day supply nationally has been low and has been trending down. The market continues to compress, and I don't think that's anything new to those of you that are even remotely close to the market. This is just one of the things that's been happening. And what do dealers think about this? How do dealers, how are dealers viewing this market compression? I think a dealer last week, kind of summed it up, and his comment was something like, it's the happiest I've ever been while under the most amount of stress I've ever experienced in my entire life. Mm-hmm. And I completely understood what he meant when he said that, because this compression of the market has created some newfound opportunities, namely front-end gross profit. With demand in most model lines and across most markets outstripping supply. So it's really put the dealers back in the driver's seat. So from that perspective, I'm sure the dealers have been enjoying it. And the stress part of the comment, of course, was just simply ensuring that there's something on the shelves to sell.
Yeah. So have you seen improvements in dealership efficiency when we look at this data? Like, I know that normally day supply would be around 90 days on average in Canada.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Claire. It's probably somewhere between 85 and 95 days, just depending on where exactly that measurement's taken. But that would be much more sort of a historical normal. Would be in that range. So completely different operating conditions. To your question regarding efficiencies, absolutely. I mean, there are things that you want to do today as a dealer, and dealers are doing today, that just goes against our DNA as a dealer, right? exercising patience with the car. Like, who's ever associated patience with trying to sell a used car off of your lot? Right. I think urgency has been sort of the normal for all time in terms of wanting to sell a car. And that isn't always the case. And I think patience does need to be exercised, and each deal needs to be evaluated to ensure, that those deals are being optimized.
Yeah, and then I think we've also seen it, especially with the utilization of our tool as well, that dealerships are actually expanding their reach and their market. So if you're offering a specific service, you have the ability to sell some of those cars across the country. I've had a dealership in Vancouver, a couple of used cars sold, one in Calgary, and one is actually the other end of the country. And that's why I guess that you have to refer to ensure that you have the ability to meet those consumer needs who are looking for those specific vehicles.
Yeah, I mean, it's ironic that you bring that point up, Clarice. It's a discussion that I had as recently as last week with some of the product leaders of our provision product, just talking about how the consumer region or shopping area is starting to evolve and starting to change. And a lot of that change is it's being empowered by tools like MotoCommerce, tools that allow consumers to do business on their own terms, potentially in their driveway, at their office, at their place of business. If I can have a dealer come to me to pick my trade-in up, to appraise my trade, if I can have a dealer come to me with a piece of new inventory, then I don't really care where the dealer is, right? So if typically I would have looked 50, 100 kilometers, I'm happy to look 200 kilometers if that dealer's equally as happy to come and see me. Right? It's going to be about my overall experience. So that's something we're looking at. And there will be some adjustments and changes that can be anticipated in terms of our product, and having some flexibility to, I'll use the word decouple a geographical region with a specific piece of inventory.
Interesting. Yeah. So on this next slide, we're looking at ultimately the day supply and that trend as well. So if you don't mind, just a quick overview on what this tells us. I think it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, I mean, I think exactly. I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, up in the top right, for those unfamiliar with provision, we've got the calculation for day supply. Again, just the supply versus demand metric. And, there's some ups and downs in this line. But I think the call out on this slide is really, where did it start? And it started about 85 days, kind of as we entered into this year. And where is it today? And it's sitting at about 35 days when we just look at it on aggregate at a national level. So just sort of a steady and continuous compression of the market. And dealers have been adapting. We've been supporting dealers with that adaptation. Our performance management team has been consulting dealers in terms of helping dealers acquire inventory and ensuring that profit optimization is the focus.
Yeah, and I think we have one more slide, and we'll lead into a summary. I know that we're running out of time here. I thought this was super interesting before we actually go to the takeaway notes. Like we know all the challenges, but what can we do with this information, and how we can actually turn things around with the tools and processes, I guess, in our back pocket or in our toolkit. But before we jump in, just a quick overview of this slide on here.
Yeah, for sure. So this is a slide that I just quickly pulled out of the history tab inside the gauge page or the pricing tool. And this allows you to really just get a quick view on a specific vehicle that you may have in inventory to understand whether that vehicle is appreciating or depreciating. So in the past, a lot of people who are provision users may or may not, probably more likely to have not been clicking into this history tab, at least not on a frequent basis. And that's just simply because vehicles always depreciated. We used to attach an estimate of about a 2% depreciation factor per month. And that's not been the case. We've seen all kinds of vehicles that have seen appreciation. So you can quickly go in here, and if the vehicle's been in inventory for any length of time, you can get a view on how that vehicle has been moving, what the price has historically looked like versus the market average price.
Yeah, awesome. All right. So as a takeaway, like what can dealerships do to overcome and get through these times?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, number one, no surprise here, it's focus on inventory
Yeah.
acquisition. Do everything that we can to ensure we've got some cars to sell, right? And what are some of the things we can do? Well, we can look at our pay plan. I've been asking dealers for weeks and months this year, do you have a pay plan that's conducive with inventory acquisition? In other words, does a salesperson on your showroom floor get paid in a similar manner if they can acquire a vehicle versus selling a vehicle? And if not, why not, right? This is something that you should think about. If there's less cars to sell, salespeople have more time. Let's get them trying to hunt some private inventory potentially.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a marketing strategy built around acquiring private inventory? Right? Is it on your website? Is it in your VDPs? Are you letting customers know that you're a buying center, that you will buy a piece of inventory regardless of whether they're buying a new car from you or not? Right? Let's make sure that that messaging is out there. Let's make sure we're doing that on a consistent basis. Tools and processes. Do you have the correct tools to support vehicle acquisition? Do you have those in place? And do you have the processes that underpin those tools? Right? What type of efforts being made in the service drive-through? What type of efforts being made to mine your own database? Right? And what type of conversion rates are you getting in those spaces? And if anybody on the call is a customer and hasn't already had these types of discussions with one of our performance managers, I would strongly encourage you to do so. We're bringing best practices to dealers, in our meetings every single week. We're happy to help in this space. We've seen a lot of things that have worked really well. And we've seen dealers who've never paid any attention whatsoever to this space.
But now they have to, I guess. Right?
And we've seen some get really good at it over a short period of time.
Yeah.
So again, inventory acquisition as a whole, absolutely every effort needs to be focused on inventory acquisition. Second piece is profit optimization. There's a button inside vAuto, inside the provision suite. It's called the VMAX button. All of you have seen it. If you've got the provision suite, it's right beside your price. You click on the VMAX button, and it's going to actually show you. It works in a real simple manner. If there's 10 cars for sale in the market and you've got yours priced in the 5th position, let's say you're right in the middle of the market, when you click on the VMAX button, it's just going to show you the dollar value gap between that 5th position and the 6th position, right? So that gap could be, hundreds of dollars, that gap could be thousands of dollars. But what it allows you to do is take a portion or all of that gap, move your car back up to that, closer to that 6th position, while still remaining in front of it.
5th position.
Not reducing any visibility of the piece of inventory, but capturing all of the potential gross, because this is just how consumer behaves, right? They make a short list, and your car is still going to be in that 5th position, the front half of the market. You want to look at every single opportunity when you're doing a deal, right? Would it ever make sense to walk away from a car deal, for example, that didn't have a trade-in? Well, maybe it would today, right? If you've got an extremely low market day supply piece of inventory, depending on market conditions in that specific time, in some instances, maybe it makes sense to hold out, to continue to leave that car for sale until you can transact in a manner where you can get a quality trade-in to again resell. And then the last thing on here is just start thinking about potentially moving to an investment-based inventory management strategy. And that's a whole nother meeting, Claire. So it's another discussion on our own. There is a module for the provision suite, and it's called Profit Time. Mm-hmm. And it really changes the way that a dealer would make decisions on inventory. It moves those decisions from a pure velocity-based mentality to an investment-based mentality. So anybody on the call who is a provision customer or who's thinking about becoming a provision customer, I would encourage you to either reach out directly to myself or to the performance manager that you're already working with. If you're interested, just ask a little bit more. We'd be happy to set up a demonstration of that product and show you how it might be able to help optimize profitability or further optimize profitability.
Yeah, awesome, Todd. Thank you. And you mentioned tools and processes. So I just wanted to make sure that our listeners on the call today are aware that actually within our own toolkit within MotoCommerce, there's abilities and functions and features that we can enable for our dealerships. One is we have a trade first option. So we do have a tool that helps with acquiring vehicles, and we can enable the two-way vAuto integration as well. So we can push the data into vAuto, and the dealer has the ability to push the value back out to customers. So you have the ability to get some of those remote appraisals over to the customers as well. We do have integrations with ICO as well. So if you're already an ICO customer, or even if you're not, you can acquire about it. So if it's an instant trade value, the one what you want to supply for your customers as well, we have that integration available. And for quite a few brands now, we have built out virtual build and price inventory. So it gives you the ability to quote, create quotes for customers and build deals for prospects, even if that piece of inventory is not in your on your lot yet. So I know that some of our dealers who are using this, in an average month, it's 15 to 20 additional opportunities they're able to capture this way, because they don't have it there, but they know they want to capture that customer, and eventually they will have that vehicle for them as well. So we wanted to make sure that these are all available to you. So if you have any questions around the specific tools in MotoCommerce and some of those integrations, feel free to reach out to me or your dealer success manager, or any vAuto related questions, you can email Todd directly as well. So Todd, I wanted to thank you so much for some of those insights. I think it's super interesting. I want to bring you back for additional conversations in the future as well. And yeah, thank you again for those insights. And thanks everyone for hopping on. I hope you find it helpful and useful. Thank you.
Thank you.